the solid waste levy imposed by the government. Pay the levy, it's a token fee to keep our country decent. $25 a month you say give you stress, but that is nothing to clean up we mess. Be a good citizen of our Queen City, go water department and pay the levy. Salute all them men who clean up our garbage. Pay the levy, they sacrifice their time to clean up where we live. You say you're only paying water in water bill, but you might just end up like Jack and Jill. The first $25 go to the levy, and you don't realize you owe for the water.
Good evening, viewers, and welcome to another edition of SWEEP, the Solid Waste Environmental Education Program. I'm Curtis Morning. This evening, I have in my presence a very distinguished guest, the Honorable Jahnel Nisbett, Minister responsible for health here on Nevis. Good evening, Minister.
Good evening, Mr.
And how are you?
I'm doing well.
Nice. We have heard a lot about the phasing out of plastics within the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. How does the Ministry of Health and Nevis fit into the whole scenario of phasing out the plastics?
Okay, well, we know when we're talking about plastic use and sustainable development, we promote the phrase of reuse, reduce, recycle. So in the Ministry of Health, especially through our solid waste department, we have been pushing the recycling aspect. Of course, that's what our major push has been. So our recycling project over there has focused mainly thus far on plastic bottles, and over the course since around 2021 we've collected over 40,000 pounds of plastic bottles. This year we were able to ship out our first container of 22,000 pounds to be recycled and upcycled into more feasible, usable materials. So our role as the Ministry of Health is to be able to fill the gap. So as we work now to reduce the amount of plastics we have, we are also still complementing that by recycling those that we still have in the environment.
So your ministry still has the outlets. There were some outlets, I think one at in Gingerland by one of the restaurants, and I think one down at by the old cinema.
Yes.
Those are still very much active at
yes,
this point?
Those are still active. You can still contact Solid Waste to find out exactly where they are. In certain times of the month, you have a team that would come out as well to be able to encourage and give incentives, but there are also established places that you can go and recycle. And while we're on that, I think individuals would have noticed that there are some red bins placed at different key locations in the community, and those are specifically
very specific
for recycling, especially plastic bottles, not necessarily a plastic bag, but plastic bottles. And so we want to encourage the public to utilize them for that purpose.
While beyond that, you must have been very pleased with the efforts of the schools in the competition that they had.
Yes.
The Nevis schools,
yes.
When they had the closing ceremony, were lauded for their efforts. Even the Cicely Brown Integrated
yes.
School, you must have been very proud.
I was so proud of them as a former teacher as well. It was uplifting to see. It was an entire school and community effort. So you had the students going home and collecting, the teachers were actively involved, the parents were involved. Individuals who wanted to support their alma mater would take their plastic bottles from their home and take to the schools to contribute. And it's this collective togetherness, collective responsibility that we wanted to be able to promote. Not just an individual effort, but a community effort to make a difference.
So we seem to be pretty much on top of the bottles. There has been a big issue though with the plastic bags. Mm-hmm. I'm certain that you notice sometimes when you go to a supermarket, for instance,
yes.
you might get one small item and the cashier or whoever is bagging would give you 2 bags.
Of course.
Not even 1 bag,
yes.
2 bags. So you seem to be heading home with a lot of bags. Mm-hmm. Somebody is saying that plastics are not necessarily the issue, but the use or misuse of the plastics is the issue. What's your take on that?
I mean, we know that plastics are an issue, but everything becomes an even graver issue when it's overused and not done in moderation. And right now, as a global society, we are overusing plastic. There's no moderation in its use, and we have to be able to rein that in because we're using it more than it can go back into the environment or decompose. So we need to be able to rein in our usage, especially in areas where we don't need to.
So when it comes to the use of plastics, for instance, and the phasing out, because I think they're going first of all to phase out the plastic bags.
Yes.
What's the take of the Nevis Island administration? For instance, I'm totally asking this out of ignorance. When laws are passed in the federal house, for instance, does the Nevis Island administration have the right or the privilege to tweak that law or put it to suit Nevis as against a federal kind of law?
The Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis has one of the most wonderful, interesting constitutions. I think it can be studied universally because it's so unique to our government. So in our constitution, it gives the Nevis Island government, administration, and assembly the rights to make exclusively to make certain laws in relation to a cross section of areas. I can't list the areas off the top of my head. It's so extensive. However, when there are areas where there are no specific Nevis ordinance, because we also have the right to make ordinances that are dedicated to certain areas in Nevis. But when there are no specific areas covered or there's no conflicting missions, if there's a federal law, it would apply to Nevis as well. And considering that this law, this push was spearheaded in a sense by our very own Honorable Minister Eric Evelyn when he was the former Minister of Environment in St. Kitts, you can understand as a cabinet and as a government in Nevis, this is also something that we support because we are contributing and supporting that move to a sustainable island state as well.
Nice. So as you move forward with phase one, what is the kind of reaction you're getting from a Nevis standpoint? Let's say from the supermarkets, because I still see the plastics going out. It is as if they have a set that they need to get out before the body is complete, because the plastics are still going out at the supermarkets. What kind of reaction are you getting from maybe customers, people who are customers, the supermarket owners? What kind of feedback are you getting?
This has been a conversation in the work for some time, and I know that the federal government would have done several consultations with the public as well as with different businesses and stakeholders as well. And so the public is aware that it's been coming. They've introduced certain months where like on Mondays, it's no plastic bag Mondays at the supermarket, so you started mentally preparing for that phasing out. And I think even though sometimes when you forget it, it's a little frustrating. You walk in and you, oh, shoot. You forget that. You forget your bag. You weren't intending to do that. But I think the public has been generally receptive to it. You have some individuals who say, well, we reuse our plastic bags because if there's one thing in the Caribbean that you will find is a drawer filled with plastic bags
at home in the kitchen.
Yes, that we're going to reuse, and that is good. While they're in the environment, it's good that we're reusing them, but we really have to now focus on the reducing, and that's where the plastic ban is coming in. And so it's coming in phases so that the public can adjust accordingly, the stores can adjust and reduce their stockpiles. It's not an overnight here, throw away all your stock, because that as well would be wastage.
I think it's like almost a year, because I think the final thing is somewhere in June next year when all should be out.
The final is November next year. Yeah.
And then they have the styrofoam and so on. They'll be gearing towards those. And I think that maybe, how does the government fit into like importation of these stuff, knowing that we are trying to get them out does the government start to kind of limit or increase prices at the port? I don't know.
As I said, the stakeholders have been consulted, so this is something that's been in the works, and that's why it's being done in a phased approach. So take the plastic bags for the t-shirt plastic bags, for example. The ban on importation of those will be on December 31st this year. So that's your last time to bring in any. After that point, don't bring in any. But there is a window now that allows you to use up the stock that you have. So next year, March 31st, 2025 is when you are now banned from handing them out. Handing them out in the shop, tying up one plate of food in it to give a customer. And so you have that phased approach that would help both customers and businesses adapt.
And I would imagine that at December 31st, there would be some education again, reminders to say, hey, remember that December 31st was it, and March 31st would be it. So more education, I guess.
Consistent education, and especially because the importation is mostly major businesses. It's a limited pool. They're well aware. They have the information. It's consistently in the news. It's consistently being talked about. I'm sure through the Chamber of Commerce, they'll also have access to that information. So, we're pushing and supporting.
Minister, as we wrap up this interview, I wanted to look into the camera and appeal to the viewing and listening public in terms of their use or misuse or the phasing out as they prepare. Your thoughts, your words to them, your advice.
I mean, for the general public, I just want to advise, first of all, to be informed on what is happening. Read, learn, listen about some of the negative impacts on the overuse of single-use plastic, not just on our environment, but on our marine life. We have limited land resource, so our landfills are overfilled, and we don't want to continually exhaust our limited resource to use as a dumping ground. So in an effort to be able to become a more sustainable island state, this is one of the steps. We'll come together and make conscientious decisions. Think about whether it is a necessity or a convenience. And once we can accept that it's a convenience, we'll be able to openly adjust accordingly. Sometimes there's going to be a trial and error period where you forget that you're now at this point, but I want us to be consistent in working towards this goal. While this single-use plastic ban is not yet capturing plastic bottles that we use for water, I want to also encourage us to continue to recycle those and reduce as much as possible those that we use. Use a bigger bottle and refill a reusable bottle. Consume those in the glass bottle. Do whatever we can. Our individual efforts together have a major collective impact. So join us as we move forward.
Thank you so much, Minister. And those keywords, convenience or necessity. I remember my years at Social Security when they were talking about was something a privilege or a right. Some people don't. For instance, one of the things I learned when I was at Social Security, and I'm sure you would have had that experience as a minister. For instance, as a manager, somebody would walk into my office and say, Mr. Morton, I am going to the bank. Now, you are not supposed to say you can't go to the bank. You're supposed to say, okay. And life is fine. We live happily thereafter. Not realizing that you don't have a right to come and say you're going to the bank. You're supposed to, first of all, ask if I could go to the bank.
Very much.
But it's like, I'm going to the bank, and you're not supposed to say anything. You could stay 2 years at the bank. You don't know which bank they're at if you're trying to find them. You don't know. It's like, that's a norm. But it's not a right. It's a privilege. So is it a convenience or a necessity? Those are keywords we'll have to work on. So thank you so much for your thoughts, and we certainly look forward to the community complying.
Thank you, and I do look forward to, of course, especially the Division public. We know that we're always on board with making Nevis much nicer than it already is, so I think they'll definitely be on board in supporting.
Thank you so much, Minister.
Thank you for viewing, and do join us next week for another edition of Sweep. I'm Curtis Morton, wishing you a wonderful evening. Pay the levy, the solid waste levy imposed by the government. Pay the levy, it's a token fee to keep our country decent. $25 a month, you say give you stress, but that is nothing to clean up we mess. Be a good citizen of our Queen City, go water department and pay the levy. Pay the levy, salute all them men who clean up our garbage. Pay the levy, they sacrifice their time to clean up where we live. You say you're only paying water in water bill, but you might just end up like Jack and Jill. The first $25 go to the levy, and you don't realize you owe for the water.